Welcome to the Welsh Yogi Podcast.
Welcome to the Welsh Yogi Podcast. We've got a very special guest today, Achut. Nice to have you with us.
Hi Krishna, nice to be here.
Did you want to do a little rap, Ben? Ben's got a little rap. See what you think of this.
It's not a rap. It's an eclectic poem. So it goes like this. I should have got it beforehand. It says, in a world full of negative sound vibrations, with a constant news rotation and a consumeristic fixation, the Welsh Yogi Podcast is a spiritual space station that offers uplifting sound vibration to the nation.
Nice.
There you go. You did it
Thank
first.
you. That was like show and tell.
Anyway, so thanks for coming on, Achut.
It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Also known as Adam. Famous for, is that his first vegan restaurant in Cardiff, is it?
That's right, yeah.
And
Analog.
you and your wife, spiritual power couple, have been running Yogaya in Swansea, which is like a centre for yoga and spiritual education and a vegan cafe. And yeah, we thought we'd talk a little bit about what it was like to, because you also practice spiritual life quite seriously as well, right?
Try to.
So,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a big part of it. It's the centre of our life, isn't it? So,
yeah.
everything else is all just to support spiritual progress.
And so how did you balance, like, especially starting a business, maintaining one, and the very sort of high demand that you put on your spiritual practice yourself? How do you find that balance? Because a lot of people might think it's very, very difficult to find such a work spiritual sort of life balance.
Yeah, I think I was very fortunate to have Tariq Anath there supporting the choices that I was making at the time. He was obviously the temple president for the ISKCON Wales, and I was, he allowed me to stay in the ashram even though I was making that transition to starting a business and being around devotees full time, living with devotees, made it. That was the only thing really that kept it possible, because I think if I hadn't been living in the association of devotees whilst I started Analoka, then it would have been a real challenge, because I didn't realise the magnitude of what it took to start and build a restaurant business.
So you gave a lot of blood, wasn't it?
I
remember you saying that.
It was a lot at the beginning, yeah. I mean, a lot of people, they do restaurants in partnerships, or at least they're a chef, so they're not dependent on someone, but I was completely dependent on, I was at the mercy of all my staff, particularly chefs. That was a real challenge in the beginning, and you're working lots of hours, so trying to get that work life, spiritual balance, proved quite challenging. And at times, I won't lie that sometimes my spiritual life it did suffer a little bit. There'd be times where I didn't finish. I don't know how tuned in the audience is, but
relatively new, they probably don't know so much.
So part of our practice is that we make a vow to chant 16 rounds of the Maha Mantra, which takes about 2 hours every day.
That's what I think is amazing. The 2 hours of focused meditation, plus everything else. Do you know what I mean? It's quite a...
Yeah, so that was real. That was a real challenge to maintain that, and there was, I wouldn't say it was every day, but considering how many actual rounds I did mix in their first 3 years, I thought that was more than acceptable.
Yeah,
So it was something like about 190 rounds that I'd missed in 2 years. Was it that much?
You were keeping tabs.
I was keeping tabs, yeah. And then when I went to India, obviously, was when I was able to catch up on those rounds. Yeah, so. Yeah, it was a real challenge, but like I say, being around devotees, living the spiritual life full time, was the thing that kept me going.
Because for the last couple of weeks, we've heard Tarek Knaaf and how he went from, Valley sort of rugby player and how he sort of came into Christian consciousness. And there was when I used to go to Aberdare, there was one gentleman who ran this clothing shop. Was it called
Yeah, I remember.
Eye Clothing? Or
I can't remember the name of it, but I remember.
So
him.
he couldn't believe he couldn't believe that Adam, who ran the Welsh cake store in Aberdare, or whatever, your reputation, he couldn't believe that you just went so into living such a pure lifestyle. Like that was like he was completely shocked by it, and he just he was wondering how it happened, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, even now I look back and I think,
How did it happen?
I'm not meant to be here. Like, given the life that I had, not many people are able to flip the switch, and and it was only because of the journey and the experiences that I went through.
What sort of journey and what sort of experiences?
Traveling in, you speak to any devotee, Hare Krishna devotee, and you probably say actually most religions, when people come to find God again in their life, they realize there's certain coincidences that, and some people choose to acknowledge those coincidences, whereas others just wash them aside.
Coincidences that aren't coincidences. Sort of
Yeah,
thing,
exactly. What's the saying? How many coincidences before it becomes mathematically impossible? So for me, there was a series of coincidences that, pushed me to go travel in India, and I was a massive fan of ketamine at the time, and India was where ketamine was manufactured. That
was the place to go.
That was the place to go. It was the cheapest place you could get it. So, I knew I was going to India for something else, but, because I'd been to Goa the year before, met some really beautiful women, had a great time, and lots of cheap ketamine and cheap beers, and everything was, it was a great place to go and party, It was a great place to go and party where you couldn't spend all of your money, but, it was lots of little coincidences, that year that said I've got to give up all my businesses, because I had 3 Welsh cake bakeries in the indoor markets at the time, and I needed to just detach from everything to go and take that leap of faith.
There were signs saying that.
Yeah,
so, like
and
what?
if I make that leap of faith, if I make that jump, that I will find the answers to some real knowledge, So, there was different things, really. Some movies that were quite prominent in my life, like The Beach, Sunshine. It was a director, it was Danny Boyle, and the writer, I can't remember his name, who wrote The Beach. Anyway, they had quite... it sounds berserk, and when when you repeat it to people, or when you listen to yourself saying it sounds like this guy's lost the plot, But sometimes my big attachment was movies, and I used to find things within films that helped me realize that.
Certain inspirations and
and the world was not quite what it was. It's quite not the picture that it's been painted out to be. Like The Matrix. That was a monumental film when I watched The Matrix.
Ben loved The Matrix.
Yeah, I cried when I saw that Morpheus scene where it's like red or blue pill. I was just like, this is life. Like you said, have you ever had a feeling that, I can't remember what he says, but have you ever had a feeling that all this isn't real and there's another world? How would you know the difference between this world and that world?
Yeah, exactly. And that had a monumental impact on my life, to be honest. To help me start thinking outside the box and start challenging my realities and stuff. And every time I took drugs from then on, I was, don't get me wrong, I was out to party as well. But whilst I was, tripping either on ketamine or whatever, I was always meditating. Okay, what is this all about? How do I go deeper. How do I find what this life is about, you know? And then I read the Carlos Castaneda books, The Teachings of Don Juan. I don't know if anybody's read those. And one of them was called A Separate Reality, you know? So they were the books really that initially made me believe in some kind of spirituality. Before then, I didn't have a clue, you know. And you know, when you look at like the Indians and stuff, they have some sort of Brahman realization, I think, you know, about the impersonal, personal aspect of God. But yeah, basically, Carlos Castaneda, he becomes an apprentice of Don Juan, and his apprenticeship is to become a man of knowledge. And once I read that, I knew without doubt that what I wanted to become was a man of knowledge. And I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I knew I would find someone who was going to teach me.
Yeah, this is amazing, because it is when that gentleman in that clothes shop, because he could see like this big contrast sort of thing, and it is interesting to hear, because it does happen like that. All of this is going on underneath the surface, sort of thing. So it is like gradual development in a lot of ways, sort of thing.
Yeah, when people, you know, you a lot of Christians or whatever, they have a conversion, don't they? When you listen to Ravindra Swarup's, the one the Rohini did the other day, the Cure of Souls. Yeah, he talks about, you know, that person who's the series is about. He goes through his conversion and people think you're mad, you know, because you're seeing things, you're identifying coincidences, you're seeing signs that other people don't see because they're obviously personal to you, but, you know, it's...
Did you ever hear Plato's analogy of the cave?
No.
You heard that? It's exactly like... I heard it when I was just coming into Krishna consciousness. It was a similar thing, like... and it's basically like... Plato is like a Greek philosopher. He had this allegory. Like an allegory is like a story that tells like a meaning of life. And basically there's all these people that are chained up in a cave, and they're seeing these like reflections of things being projected on the wall of the cave. Yeah. So that they see the reflection of a tree, the reflection of a rabbit, the reflection of... And they start giving names to these things, they start discussing these things that they see, the reflections. And one day one of the guys, he gets sort of unchained from the being locked there. And at first he's like unchained, and he sort of stays there for a bit with his friends, and he's looking at the projection, still part of that. But then he decides, okay, I'm gonna have a little walk around the cave, and he walks around, and then eventually he like comes out of the cave, and then all of a sudden he's on the surface, and so his eyes are like, at first it's like, what is happening here? Like, what am I seeing? And his eyes slowly adjust like that, and then he starts to see like, oh, there's a real tree there, and there's a rabbit. These are the things that they've been talking about in there, but this is the like reality. Like, and he sees the sun, and so anyway, he's like blown away. Yeah. And he's like, I gotta go tell my friends about this. so like he trots down the cave. He goes back in there, and he's like, guys, you've got to see this out there. There's all these things that we've been looking at, but it's the reality, it's the truth. It's not just these fake projections. You know? Yeah. And the friends are like, what is he doing? Like, what's he talking about? Come and sit down and look at the projection, you know. But then eventually they get annoyed that he keeps telling them, and they plot to kill him in the end. Like, but it's like this classic, like, you know. Yeah. Once you break out, you want to tell everyone about it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, when you are trying to tell people just don't want to listen, you know, because they live in their own life, and everyone is, you know, on their own journey. You can obviously try to plant little seeds in people, and hoping that they'll take those, you know, little bits of knowledge, maybe, you know, put some substance into their life, you know, and not just live that consumerist lifestyle, which we see now is, I mean, even people can't consume anymore with all this going on, you know. And I see so many people, like, you know, my family, and they, even though this, you know, I don't want to go down the old vaccine COVID route, but you know, it's still experimental, but they're so desperate to have sense gratification that they're willing to take an experimental vaccine regardless of what the long-term effects may be, because one thing we do know is that we don't know the long-term effects, but they're so desperate for some sense gratification after being locked up for 2 years that they're willing to risk it, you know? So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's been a mad few years.
So then, what was your? Because that's, I think, like Ben, you were saying, like when you go out with the cave
Yeah.
and you saw the real rabbit or whatever.
You're sort of having a spiritual awakening.
So, I think with you know, dedicating one's life to actually dedicating your life to, like you said, a pursuit of knowledge and spiritual cultivation, to inspire that, it does, at least from what I've experienced and from speaking to other practitioners, is a real spiritual experience. You know, one that's tangible, real, and that you just can't doubt. Did you have anything like that?
Yeah, if I didn't have that, I probably
exactly,
never would have been able to make the changes in my life, you know, because I was such an addict. I used to say how much I loved life, but what I really loved was every day I'd be off my nut, and every day would be an adventure to try and find a different girl or find a different party, just enjoy the experiences of others, and I used to thrive on that. But like you say, under the surface, I was always craving a deeper understanding of life more than anything else.
So that trip to India was life-changing?
Oh, completely life-changing. And yeah, I mean, like I said to you, I always thought I would meet someone I was going to be able to teach me becoming a man of knowledge. And when I was out there, I remember, I'd been partying for maybe a month or two, and ended up in a place called Palalem down in South Goa. And I remember, I built a little altar to Lord Shiva, no idea why, and I was offering him incense, and no idea what I was doing.
Previous life or something? Have you read your life, like last life read or anything like that?
No, I haven't. No, never had that done. But yeah, I don't know why. But later on, you find out that Lord Shiva gives his mercy to the most intoxicated. You know, and there wasn't a single day that I wasn't out of my mind when I was away. But I remember sitting on the beach, and it was a sunset, and I remember saying, "Look, Jesus, God, Shiva, Muhammad, whoever you are," I said, I have literally followed every sign to get to here right now. And if I'm going to meet someone who's going to be able to teach me some real knowledge, then it needs to be now, And I went to I can't remember what party it was, but it was, it might have been like, they used to have these silent discos or something, and I remember being, there was a woman from the Ukraine, and she started talking to me all this random stuff, but I was just so desperate for this knowledge that, she's telling me about Mount Kailash and Lord Shiva and stuff, and I'd been like offering incense to Lord Shiva, so I was really captivated by the things she was telling me, and I didn't know whether it was real or not real. But I knew it was the same day the following day that I'd asked, I'd looked up to God and said, "Where do I go from here?" And she was telling me all this stuff. And I remember then she took me to see this so-called sadhu or Brahmin or whatever in Gokana, which is like about an hour and a half from Palalem on a train. And I remember being on the beach with them, and they were like, I don't know, it was like a mysterious thing, but he was drinking rum and we were smoking weed and stuff, or hash. And he said, "How far can you swim?" I remember just swimming out in the ocean in the middle of the night and just completely letting go. And I said, where am I supposed to go from here,
So he said, "How far can you swim?" And then you just went into the sea?
I just went into the sea and I just swam, swam for ages. And and I remember just thinking, if I'm supposed to die, then I'm going to die, but ultimately I'm just here surrendering, Yeah. And then I heard a voice saying, "You're not supposed to kill yourself," Yeah. So that's when I turned around then, and I could see the two, the sadhu and the lady from Ukraine. They were in a tizzy on the beach, thinking that I was dead or something. I thought I drowned, But I remember coming back onto the beach, and I didn't know if I was alive or dead. It was just like such a mental experience, and I remember shaving my head then the next day, and I bumped into some devotees there. Never spoke to them, but they used to go to this dosa place,
Hare Krishna devotees.
Yeah, it seems to be a place where devotees go. And then I went back to Palalem then, and she, I sort of like, I had my suspicions then, like, you know, is she real, is she not real after this experience, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I took some time away from her then, and continued my holiday, and
You were questioning whether
whether she was actually sincere, whether she
Uh-huh.
actually had any knowledge, or whether she was just trying to take advantage of me for to enjoy me, like.
Yeah.
She was a bit older, like, you know, and but ultimately I went up to Kashmir then, a place called Srinagar, where people up there say like well, that's where Jesus left, and there's these footprints there, and it was from a sage, and his name was Jesus, and some people say that was where Jesus actually, where he was actually buried, but that's debatable given the history that the Catholic Church and stuff tried to propagate. But so when I was there then, and I after about a week, I'd been in India 6 months, and I'd had enough. So I went down to Delhi with my mate, and I said, oh, look, let's just get a nice hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And she rang me up. She said, look, I got to come and see you. And she said, you got to go to Vrindavan, you know? And I was like, and Steve was there, and he said, yeah. He said, come on, the Taj Mahal's there anyway. You know, it's on the way to the Taj. You haven't seen the Taj yet. You can't come India and not see the Taj. And then, so we went to see the Taj, and on the way back then, we stopped in Vrindavan, and that's where I walked into the ISKCON temple. I didn't know what ISKCON was at the time. I thought it was an Indian word or something. And I remember walking up into the bookstore there, and I said, have you got any books on spiritual life? Like, you know, and that's when they gave me Bhagavad Gita as it is.
So that's far out, because you don't just end up in Vrindavan sort of thing. It's quite to be searching like that, sort of so quite intensely, you know, to actually, you know, where and I think a lot more people than we think have had that experience where, like, they're on the beach and they're literally just crying out for some direction. You know, I think it's probably more common than we think, you know. And to end up in Vrindavan, which is, you know, amongst all the Vedas, Vrindavan is the most sort of sacred place in the universe, sort of thing. And I think that's amazing.
And yeah, I remember walking around in a vest, you know, I'd been juiced up and been in the gym, like, you know, and everyone was just looking at me gone off, thinking, how did you end up here? Like, you know.
Gorilla walking through.
Stopping for pictures of everyone, like, you know, because everyone's a picture with you, like, being the centre of attention, as I always like to be. But, yeah, I remember, like I say, I walked up and he said, I think the two brahmacharis, they just looked at each other. We've got any books on spiritual life? And yeah, they give me a Bhagavad Gita, obviously. But it's funny because my mate Spilly, he gave me, before I went travelling, he gave me a book called The Alchemist. And I don't know if you read that by Paulo Coelho. And it was about a boy who's he's a sheep herder in the Andalusia mountains, and the sheep is his business. And he gives up his business, his sheep, to go in search of the treasure. He goes traveling around Africa, looking for, you know, what he thinks is the treasure, but ultimately it was where he left off. It was in the church. He was buried in the church where he used to live. And I, you know, it resonated with me when I come back. I started reading Bhagavad Gita then, and, you know, there was other things that happened that when I finally come to Atma. But obviously I had given up my businesses. I went travelling all around India, and it wasn't ultimately until I got back, actually, I found devotees, really, because I didn't know what devotees were then. I remember taking a mick, like I said to my mate, everyone's like, you know, in Vrindavan, it was Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Look at these characters. But I remember saying to him, because I was taking the mick out of these devotees, and I didn't know what they were, but I remember saying to him, I said, watch, I bet something happens to me now. And because I understood there was some potent energy where I was, like, you know. And I remember walking down the street and my ankle gave way, like just collapsed on me, like, you know. And I said to him, see, I told you something would happen for me taking a mick. And, you know, that was another little sign. And then I came back then and what happened then? Oh yeah, I ended up going back to IB. I remember ringing the Hindu temple. I think I rang the Sanatan Dharm down in, and they said, because I wanted to study this Bhagavad Gita because I'd started reading into it, and you know, it was like a big wave was being lifted off my shoulders, like, you know, it was just like, oh my God, this is real truth, like, you know. And I'd never read anything that was changing me so much just by reading it, like, you know. I was thinking, this is a book that I really need to understand. And then I started ringing around, and I remember driving, I got all the way to Fitzallen Place and just turned around because they were giving Bhagavad Gita classes, like, you know. And I think it might have been Tarkanath even doing the Bhagavad Gita classes at the time. But I ended up turning around, and I went to Ibiza then, went partying a bit more. And yeah, I came back then. I said, you know, where do I go from here again? I asked God, like, you know, okay, followed all your signs again, where do I go? And my mate Tom, he rang me up and he said, look, I met these Hare Krishnas on a street in Cardiff. They got a cafe in Crewis Road called Atma. And it was the same day. It's just, yeah, okay, that's where I need to go. And when I went there then, I seen Prema and Tarkanath, who I'd seen on streets before. But more importantly, I seen Bhagavad Gita, and I think, oh, that's where this is their book, like, you know. So yeah, that's when I, you know, realised this is what I want to give my life to, like, you know. But yeah, if we have these coincidences, if you're having them, don't push them to the side, innit, you know. Recognise that there's a higher power trying to direct you and help show you your path, like, you know.
Yeah. That's such a journey, like.
Yeah, it was a mad experience, but like, given the life that I was having, if I hadn't had such a mad experience, then I probably never would have been. If I'd met devotees on the streets or whatever, it would have been very difficult for me to say, okay, this is what I want to give my life to.
Yeah, I was just because I would also been traveling and went back to Swansea, and you know, like you said, it was there the whole time, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But you know, it's good. These experiences, you do need a bit of a knock, don't you, before you agree to sort of change your life around, sort of thing. You need these sort of experiences and that, and they are there if you just put your ear to the ground, isn't it? Sure.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, everyone has these experiences, don't they? You know, these coincidences in their life, these certain deja vus and stuff like
Even
that.
if you're listening to this podcast now, like, it's not just, do you know what I mean? Like, take it as a... I turned the computer on, I was just listening to this far-out story about this person finding spiritual life and talking about signs and stuff. Maybe
maybe I need to buy this Bhagavad Gita and understand it a little bit. But I mean, obviously, you know the knowledge that's in there. You don't read anything like it, you know. When you're so addicted to attracted to the Matrix and stuff like that, and then you understand that there's a matrix of illusion and you're not the body, and you know, so many things like that. It really resonated with me, and thought, yeah, this is what I want to do. These are the realizations that I want to get, like, you know. I want to understand, I want to realize that I'm not this body. I want to realize what this matrix of illusion is, and I really want to see the truth free from any doubt. And that's obviously when I decided to dedicate my life to it. I think it was Govardhan Puja in 2012, I think it was. 2011, sorry. No, 2012. And yeah, I've been practicing ever since. But it's not easy, you know. It's nothing that's... Nobody ever achieves anything worth of value without hard work. And there'll be ups, there'll be downs. But you've just got to stick at it and graft away, and you can achieve a lot then, like, you know. Whether you want to be a business person and be spiritual, where you want to be famous like an actor and be spiritual, you can do anything you want to do. But add Krishna consciousness to your life and you'll achieve a lot more, and you'll be a lot more satisfied in your achievements as well. So that was how I came to Krishna consciousness anyway.
So what's next? What's next for Achut then? For Adam, looking in the future, sort of any plans, any goals? You're just gonna take it as it comes for the minute. Any?
Well, obviously, I mean, the last couple of years has been a real shift in the world.
Yeah, everything's been put in its head, isn't it?
Yeah, economically, you know, we're having a catastrophe, and I don't think people have realised that. They think people don't understand how the financial system works, how money is created, and you know, there's no free lunch, and we're creating all this money. Someone's got to pay for it, you know. So, you know, if people think the last couple of years have been hard with waiting until the tax hikes start coming in, like, you know, and people are going to really start to feel how bad these lockdowns and what they've actually done for the economy, for people's livelihoods, for people's businesses. You know, even myself, speaking from experience, I've sold Analoka now, and your guy has been closed for a couple of, you know, for 2 years. So yeah, I mean, I'm lucky, you know, I've had an understanding of, you know, how the financial system works, what are hard assets, and I've always been investing, putting money, you know, so-called money, which some people wouldn't even call money, which is like pounds and dollars. They call them currency. Real money is like gold and silver. So I've always been investing in stuff like that, and ultimately cryptocurrencies as well. So they've done very well, but my goal is after we come out of lockdown, and if we get some sort of settled economy, is to get my kombucha company off the ground, and do whatever it takes to help build this temple here in Cardiff, in Boot Street, finish this project, and then hopefully start a farm community, you know, which has to be, when you realise now it's, with what's going on, it's the most essential thing that we can do now is find land, become self-sufficient, because, yeah, I don't think the way this totalitarian state is coming down, it's not going to be a pleasure to live in a world where every single thing is getting clocked, where you've got to have vaccine passports, and you've got to do this, and you've got to quarantine for £1,750 in a hotel for 10 days, and once you come back from a country, it's going to be, you know, only the elite will be able to travel, you know. And they even said if you're high net worth, you haven't got to actually quarantine. So there's a two-tiered system already, you know. People need to wake up to what's going on and realise that nothing out there is going to make you happy. You know, nothing material can satisfy you, and nothing material you can take with you. It's only what you achieve spiritually is the thing that you can take with you, and yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing, because you said when you read the Bhagavad Gita, you were getting like all these kind of like realize it. Like it's quite a mystical. When you first read the Bhagavad Gita, it's like a proper. It's almost like a trip. Like a kind of, for me at least, it's almost like some kind of drug trip, because there's all this truth coming to you. Like, and you said that book about, what was his name, John Paulo, the book that
Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist.
Yeah, isn't that to do with like peyote? And, like,
no, that was the Carlos Castaneda books. That
okay.
was, yeah, they're the ones where he takes a lot of hallucinogenics to try and get some realizations.
Yeah, so like that kind of, that experience of a psychedelic experience is kind of like a shadow of like realizations. But when you get that Bhagavad Gita in your hands and you're starting to hear those truths come over. But what you just said, that was the first thing that hit me, was when, like you say, every bit of progress you make materially is temporary. Because you lose your body, then you lose all your house and all your cars.
Yeah, you can't take it with you.
You can't take it. But like you said, when you make spiritual progress, it's like you never lose that save in the game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
so even if you fall away from spiritual life, you've got that in the bank account, which is
exactly. And people don't realize as well that, you know, what is this life for? You know, some people are poor, some people are wealthy, some people achieve, some people don't, some people are happy, some people are sad, some people are rich and miserable, some people are poor and happy, you know. What is it all about, you know? So, you know, the human form of life is for trying to realize what this life is for. And it's such a short experience, even though we think it's a long time. We have to realize what it's for and put ourselves to utilize and to achieving what it's actually for. Otherwise, if we're just living to enjoy our senses, any animal can do that, can't they? You know. So yeah, we need to.
I was reading about that in the Shir Upanishad about Prabhupada calls them polished animals.
Mm-hmm.
It's like animals, they're always having sex and like eating and sleeping and defending. But like that's kind of what, you know, we have sex but in like a posh apartment or something, or like we're doing the same things, eating but in a nice restaurant.
Yeah.
It's the same idea. It's just like
Exactly, and people don't realize as well, sexual liberation, which is so prominent in today's society, is actually another control mechanism. When Israel invaded one of the Arab countries, I forget which Arab country it was, they took over the TV stations, and out of 6 channels, all 5 of them, they just put on pornography, because they knew it weakened men, you know. And
Weakens the resolve.
yeah.
And
And then when we went into lockdown, the first lockdown, Germany, Italy, Spain, Pornhub gave them free premium accounts because they want to subdue men from actually rising up, and they just want to weaken the power of a man. And if he gives himself into such, sexual liberation, if you want to call it, then people don't realize the damaging effect actually that it's having on them.
It takes like a certain level of like detachment to see that though, because when you're just like a young man going through life,
Yeah, your
like,
testosterone
it's so
is-
powerful.
Mhm.
Like especially like porn. You go on Instagram, it's like the same as all these like half naked people. Like you're just being pulled around by these like
Everywhere you look.
constant music videos
music
now.
video-
and-
everything. Yeah.
Oh, they're so bad as well, and they they are just like
Yeah.
they are like soft porn, the
Yeah.
music
Yeah.
videos of today, and the music is awful. You can't even call it music anymore, I don't think. But yeah, the world is changing.
Yeah.
I miss the 90s. Where the world was normal before the internet. But no, he was talking about Bhagavad Gita, and I could never conceive of any conception of God prior to reading Bhagavad Gita. My father was Muslim, and I'd been to church because I was like in the Cubs when I was a kid, and it was such a leap of faith to try and conceive of God in the knowledge that they were imparting, that I just could not relate to it, But then reading Bhagavad Gita, it was actually, yeah, this is how it is, It was talking about the different energies, how the universe is created, how the soul's impregnated into the, it was all there. It's just such a vast, deep wealth of knowledge that you will just not find anywhere else. When you read other scriptures, the knowledge is not there. It's all about faith, and that's why people lose faith in those scriptures. Why people obviously leave a lot. Why we see such a decline in people practicing said religions is because it lacks that depth of knowledge, and it's all about just having faith, and there's no practical application of how do I actually become free of karma. How do I realize who is God, what is God? That depth of knowledge isn't there. But I think these days what I am seeing, certainly from the last couple of years with the lockdowns and stuff, is that we are seeing people actually really there is a culture of people really starting to believe in God again, and I'm noticing that. And I think, we look at how the Krishna consciousness started. Prabhupada was preaching to the counterculture, as they call them. They were the hippies and stuff. And I think today, the hippies of today, or the counterculture today, are, what I'm seeing from the last couple of years with these lockdowns, are actually the conservatives. They seem to be the counterculture of the, we always think the liberals are the counterculture, and but that's the indoctrinated. That's the result of the indoctrination that they're going through in school and university, sexual liberation and everything like that. Whereas I'm seeing even my friends who one of them just moved to Spain now. He's Catholic, and he just turned to Catholicism, and he's abandoned pornography, and we're seeing a lot of people starting to wake up to this. Actually, these things are not good for me. There's a book called Libido Dominandi, which is really good, and it talks about how sexual liberation is used to control society. You know,
and that's when you're talking about, because the Bhagavad Gita and other sort of books like that presented by Srila Prabhupada, they are very practical, very scientific, very philosophical, and it does, you know, Krishna does turn these things on its head in terms of what we think real control is over ourselves. So like real self-control, how if you feed a fire, it just grows and grows. So if we just keep serving what our body and senses demand, then we'll just always want more and more and more.
And it weakens us.
Yeah.
You give in, you know.
Weakens our as well. Bogashai prashaktanam tai part of chetasam, as was it vyasa atmikar buddhi samadhi na vidyate. Krishna explained those who are too attached to material enjoyment, the resolute determination for samadhi or absorption in spiritual life doesn't happen.
No, because you're just giving in to your desires all the time, you know. Whatever the mind
You're not in
wants,
control, like you're not the body, and the body's
exactly.
just
You're
dragging
just
you
being
from...
dictated to, pulled here, pull there, need that, want this, gotta go do this, you know. But having that control is a powerful thing, you know. It gives you real strength, or shakti, as they say in the scriptures. So, yeah, we got to learn self-control because people are going to need that self-control right now, because they're not going to have the standard of living that they've had, and it's going to drive people crazy. Not being able to have the things that they want.
Huh? Will you come on again if we have another podcast in the future?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what a year from today looks like, to be honest, you know, because yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the results of the actions that we took. You know, how the economy is going to withstand. Are we going to have is it going to blow up? Are we going to see the real bankruptcy of countries, because most governments are bankrupt? Most banks are bankrupt. And are we going to see a transition to a new currency system, which could be a digital currency, which, you know, the IMF and the central banks are talking about? But the level of control that they'll have over individual lives, then they'll be able to tax you individually. You know, because there'll be no middle bank anymore, so high street banks will disappear. Central banks will give you and allocate your money, but they'll tax you as well. And if you're a bad boy, won't send you your digital currency. You know, if you don't take a vaccine, you're not having access. If you spit on the floor, then you're going to be fined, a penalty charge notice. You'll have no choice to pay it, because it'll all be done from a centralized banking system. You know, so
complete control of the population.
We're going to see some interesting changes, I think.
Nice. Do you have any questions, Charlie, on Facebook or anything? Or?
No question. A few nice comments, but there's no question.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much.
Nice.
And yeah, we'll see you next week. Those of you who are on live, Atma is open today, so if you want to come in and get some food or whatever, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, very cool. And if you are listening on Facebook, we're available on Spotify, iTunes, all the podcast places. So
Instagram as well.
We've got Instagram.
Yeah.
But the podcast is not on there. But
links to it.
But yeah, links and stuff like that. So yeah, make sure you follow us and give us 5 stars on iTunes.
I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
That was cool.
Thank you. Enjoying it myself.
Fantastic.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda